Sonic the Hedgehog 3 blew up in popularity. Fans loved it, this lifelong Sonic the Hedgehog fan included, and critics seemed respected overall. Or at least the majority seemed to. But if you've been online lately, you might have seen the other side of criticism which always pops up. You know, the condescending side filled with people trying to tear stuff down. Take Team 4 Store for example. They dismissed it as a baby movie, as if that somehow invalidates its impact. Then you have Greg Owen, who analyzed it like it was some kind of unsolvable riddle, treating storytelling like a checklist instead of experiencing it for what it is. He seemed more like he was conflicted since he wanted to do that talking down energy, but likewise recognized that he was in the wrong and couldn't understand why. And then there's Matt Walsh, whose entire reveal turned into a smug takedown. Now, all of them are entitled to their opinions and experiences. That isn't what I care about. What I'm invested in is the immediate pushback all of them have received. The consistent, immediate, overwhelming backlash. Given how popular Sonic 3 is, I'm not surprised. No amount of criticism can take away a story's impact once it truly resonates with people. You can break it down, nitpick it, call it flawed, but if it hits home for its audience, none of that matters. And the reverse is true too. If a story doesn't resonate, no amount of logical explanations or marketing will force people to care about it. Just look at the Marvels. It had everything a studio could ask for. Big budget, big franchise, endless marketing. And yet, nobody cared. Because no matter how much effort you put into promoting something, if the audience doesn't feel a real connection, it's dead on arrival. This brings us to my number one belief as a creator. Resonance is the ultimate metric. That's the real secret behind every successful story. Not just technical perfection, not just checking boxes, but crafting something that generally moves people. And this is where so many writers struggle. They obsess over whether they're following the right rules of storytelling, whether their structure is perfect, if they've hit every beat of a traditional 3-act structure, if their character arcs are correct. Others worry endlessly about originality, fearing that their ideas aren't fresh enough or that their story will be dismissed as derivative. Some get lost in the pursuit of making their writing sound impressive, packing with flowery prose instead of focusing on emotional connection. And then there's those who chase trends, believing that mimicking what's popular will guarantee success. But the real question they should be asking isn't about rules, originality, or trends. It's, does my story resonate? For those who don't know what resonance is, it's that invisible force that makes people care, that makes a story feel like it's made for them. Think about your favorite stories. The ones you can't stop thinking or talking about. The ones you come back to over and over again. That's not just good storytelling. That's resonance. It's what makes a story live rent-free in someone's head. And that's what separates stories that hit hard from stories that just exist. Now, a story can resonate in 3 core ways. Emotional resonance. This is the gut punch, the thrill, the heartbreak. It's when a story hits you right in the feels. It's why people cry at the end of The Iron Giant, or why Breaking Bad had people screaming at their screens. 2. Intellectual resonance. This is the stuff that sticks in your brain. The deep themes, the big questions, the wait, what does this mean moments. Think Inception, The Matrix, or any story that keeps you thinking long after it's over. 3. Aesthetic resonance. This is when a story just pulls you in through sheer atmosphere, visuals, or sound. The haunting beauty of Blade Runner 2049. The sheer world-building of Lord of the Rings. The raw style of Spider-Verse. It's that immersive experience that makes a story feel bigger than life. Now, the best stories hit all 3, but even mastering just one can make a story unforgettable. Quick question for you since I'm curious. What are some stories that resonate with you? For me, the game I'm playing right now, Shadow Hearts, is up there on the list. It's actually the story that really solidified that I wish to be a storyteller. I'd love to hear more about this type of stuff from you in the comments. Anyway, now that I've scratched that itch, let's clear something up. Resonance is not just good writing. Plenty of perfectly structured stories are forgettable because they don't actually connect with anyone. So, keep these 3 things in mind. Resonance isn't about following a checklist. You can hit all the right beats, structure everything by the book, and still create something that feels soulless. Resonance isn't about originality for the sake of originality. It's not about coming up with the most unique plot twist. It's about execution. A familiar idea, done right, can resonate way more than something new that connects with no one. Resonance isn't about chasing trends. Sure, trends can get eyes on your work, but resonance is what makes people stay. If your story isn't hitting people where it matters, no amount of rule following, originality, or trend chasing will save it. Now, having said all that, I bet you're wondering, how do I achieve resonance? What can I tell you that'll be worth listening to me for however many minutes is left in this video? Well, I have 4 lessons that, if you embrace, will elevate you as a storyteller forever. Once you understand these 4 lessons to make your stories resonate, something will shift. If you're someone who follows the rules of storytelling to the letter, believing that structure and formula guarantees a great story, you'll evolve into a purpose-driven writer. You'll gain creative freedom and confidence in your own storytelling choices, no longer feeling constrained by a need for external validation. If you're someone who actively rejects storytelling rules, believing that breaking them is the key to originality, you'll shift into a smart innovator. This shift will allow you to innovate with purpose, ensuring that your bold storytelling choices feel intentional and impactful rather than random. If you're a plot-first writer who prioritizes events, actions, and plot twists over character depth, you'll transition into a transformation-first writer. Your stories will have stronger emotional payoffs, making them far more memorable and meaningful. And if you're obsessed with originality, constantly worried that your ideas aren't new enough, you'll become an impact-driven writer. These 4 lessons will help you stop fearing tropes and instead focus on delivering unforgettable experiences. So, what are these 4 fundamental lessons that are going to make everything better for you? 1. Clarity creates resonance. 2. The rules of storytelling are theories, not laws or even guidelines. 3. The stories are emotional journeys that must transform the character and audience. 4. Resonance comes from understanding and intentional crafting. Now, I know that all might sound simple on the surface. This is basically an iceberg type situation. We're still only seeing the tip. So let's work our way down to the depths, starting with pressing the like button. It tells YouTube that this video is resonating with you. And if you're not sure if you want to press it yet or not, hear what I have to say on these 4 things. I'm certain it'll more than convince you that you want to do everything in your power to keep this channel around. Lesson 1. Clarity creates resonance. If you want your story to resonate, you need one thing above all else: clarity. This is the reason behind everything I design. Without clarity, your story is just a collection of ideas, hoping to land with someone, but probably never fully hitting the mark unless you get really, really lucky. As for what you want clarity in, that can be split across 3 categories. 1. Clarity on what you're creating. Many writers start with an idea but never define what they actually want their stories to achieve. They have characters, a setting, maybe even a plot, but they don't ask, what is this story supposed to do? Is it meant to move people emotionally? Make them think differently about something? Transport them to a completely different world? Without that core clarity, stories feel scattered, aimless, or shallow. Every choice you make, from character arcs to dialogue, need to serve the bigger purpose of your story. And if you don't know what that is, neither will your audience. 2. Clarity on what tools will achieve that goal. Writers who struggle with execution often aren't lacking skill, they're lacking clarity on which tools create the effect they want. Every storytelling technique is a tool, but if you don't know how or why to use it, you're just throwing things at the wall. For instance, want a deep emotional resonance? You need strong character arcs, vulnerability, and powerful moments of catharsis. Want to make people think? You need thematic depth, layered conflict, and room for audience interpretation. Want to make your world feel real and immersive? You need specificity in world building, consistent tone, and sensory details. It's not enough to use tools randomly. The best writers know exactly what effect they want and which storytelling choices will get them there. 3. Clarity on who you're creating it for. Resonance is audience dependent. The same story that hits one group hard might completely miss another. And if you don't know who your story is meant to impact, you're playing a guessing game with your audience. A story meant to hit emotional explorers will use different tools than one aimed at intellectual analysts or adrenaline seekers. A slow burn Character-driven tragedy won't land the same way for someone who's looking for high-stakes action. But if you know your audience, you can refine your story's emotional core to reach them. By the way, if you're wondering what I meant by emotional explorers, intellectual analysts, and all that, I've actually built an entire framework for identifying different types of audience members and what they connect with most. I'll be covering that later. If you're interested, stick around to the end of the video. Anyway, always ask yourself, who are you trying to reach? Are you here for deep, intimate storytelling? Big spectacles? Philosophical exploration? The answer shapes everything about your approach. Regardless of what kind of story you're telling, resonance doesn't happen by accident. Stories that hit hard, that connect, that people carry with them. These stories weren't just lucky. They were built with precision. And precision comes from clarity, because clarity leads to precision, and precision leads to resonance. If you're struggling to make your story connect, the first question you should ask isn't, did I follow the rules? It's, do I have absolute clarity on what I'm trying to achieve? The clearer you are on what you're making, how to make it work, and who it's for, the stronger the resonance will be. Law 2. The rules of storytelling are theories, not laws. Alright, let's talk about one of the biggest misconceptions in storytelling, the so-called rules of writing. Before we dive in, I must give credit to K.M. Weiland for opening my mind to this and really breaking down what it means. I've taken the idea even further than she started. I stand on the shoulders of giants, but still, I like crediting those where I can. So, first, here's what we mean when we say the rules are theories. They're patterns that have been observed over time because they resonate with audiences. Basically, storytelling is something of a soft science. The theories themselves, when properly constructed, all have some origin in psychological principles. Or, in simpler terms, theories are the how, psychological principles are the why. Like when I tell you that active sentence construction is often more effective than passive sentence construction because it works with how the human brain simulates the world around us. Now, having said that, together, theory and psychology merge to form craft, which is the set of techniques and tools we use to make our stories work. And here's the crazy part. When we use these tools together over and over again, they shape our intuition, creating a feedback loop that makes storytelling feel instinctive over time. Intuition doesn't just come out of nowhere. It's built through a combination of theory, principles, and practice. When you understand storytelling theories, your intuition starts recognizing what works. You don't have to sit there analyzing every little detail. Your gut just knows when a twist should happen, and when a moment doesn't land right. That's because you've absorbed the pattern, the structure, the pacing. But theory alone isn't enough. That's where psychological principles come in. These are the emotional beats that make a story resonate. Ever had a moment where a scene just felt off? You might not be able to articulate why at first, but deep down, you knew it wasn't hitting the way it should. That's because the brain is wired to detect emotional resonance. And then there's practice. The more you write, revise, and analyze, the more natural all this becomes. Over time, you stop constantly thinking about the rules and start making instinctive decisions that are still backed by theory and principle. And this all leads into the feedback loop that constantly refines your storytelling instincts. It's a simple process. Observe, create, reflect, and refine. First, you observe. You study great stories and see theories and principles in action, paying attention to what resonates and why. Then you create. You apply what you've learned and experiment with in your own writing. After that, you reflect, analyze what worked, what didn't, and why. And finally, you refine, taking everything you've learned and applying it to make your next story even stronger. And the more you repeat the cycle, the more these external tools, these theories and principles, become internalized skills. Real quick, here's a trap that a lot of writers fall into. Some get stuck at different stages of the cycle and never grow. Some people only observe. They break down stories, analyze every scene, read craft books, and watch endless writing advice, but they never actually create. They feel like they're learning, but they're stuck in a passive state because they never test their understanding. If you never create, you never develop storytelling instinct. Then you have writers who create but never reflect. They crank out story after story, convinced that sheer volume of writing will make them better. But if they never stop to analyze what's working and what isn't, they end up making the same mistakes over and over. Writing more doesn't automatically make writing better. Intentional reflection is what sharpens your craft. And this is where the real shift happens. When you stop seeing storytelling as a rigid set of rules and start recognizing it as a living craft shaped by theory, psychology, and intuition, you stop second guessing yourself. You stop worrying about whether you're breaking the rules and start making intentional choices. You gain confidence in your instincts because they're built on a foundation of understanding and experience. That's the difference between a mechanical writer and a master storyteller. Once you embrace this mindset, you'll never approach storytelling the same way again. Lesson 3. Stories are emotional journeys that must transform the character and audience. It's really difficult to create a great story if you don't actually know what a story is. And a lot of us think we do, but we don't. I was lucky enough to learn this from Wired for Story, and from that, I refined my own definition. A story is an emotional journey which a character is shaped and transformed by the events they face, revealing a deeper truth. This transformation is at the heart of the story, supported by plot, which structures it, world building, which contextualizes this, and genre and medium, which shapes its form. Ultimately, a story is about how events change a character and reflect something universal about the human experience. Now, I used to believe that stories could be neatly categorized in plot-driven, character-driven, or setting-driven. It made sense. Some stories emphasize world building, some focus on intricate plots, some delve deep into character arcs. But the more I analyze my favorite books and movies, the more I realize this way of thinking is misleading. This assumption that stories are driven by a single element is what I like to call separation theory. It suggests that plot, character, and setting function independently, like separate tracks in a video game where you choose which one you want to prioritize. But that's not how audience engagement actually works. Studies on narrative engagement show that audiences become emotionally invested through their attachment to characters. The stronger that connection, the more impactful the story. Affective disposition theory supports this, stating that audiences form moral judgments about characters, and these emotional bonds keep people engaged. The research is clear. If a story doesn't engage emotionally, it doesn't work. And the most effective way to create emotional engagement? Through character. Studies on audience immersion reinforce this. When people deeply connect with a character, the brain activity mirrors that of the character's experiences. This is why emotionally compelling stories are remembered far more than plot details or lore dumps. Without a character connection, audiences disengage. The Secrets of Story bring this up quite well with its Laws of Writing for Strangers. In it, Matt Berry points to box office failures, Green Lantern, and John Carter, and how they started with massive world-building dumps instead of giving the audience an emotional anchor in the form of a character. Compare this to Dune or Star Wars, where we experience the world through the protagonist's personal journey. This is where so many stories fail, prioritizing lore over emotional engagement. Basically, here, let me use a quick analogy. Saying a story is plot-driven or character-driven is like saying a symphony is violin-driven or drum-driven. Sure, a violin might carry the melody, but without the rest of the orchestra, the pieces fall flat. The reason great music moves people isn't because one instrument dominates. It's because all elements work together to create a cohesive, emotional experience. That is how storytelling works. And that's what also brings us to the final lesson. Lesson 4. Resonance comes from understanding and intentional crafting. I created a definition not too long ago to help explain what storytelling is. It goes as follows. Storytelling is the art and science of creating emotional resonance through structured communication designed to engage, move, and connect with an audience. Now, why does this definition matter? Because it shifts how you think about writing and what actually makes a story work. Here, let me break it down. First, it shifts the focus from telling a story to creating an experience. A lot of writers get caught up in just relaying events. What happened? Who does what? How things unfold. But that's not enough. A great story isn't just told, it's felt. When you recognize that storytelling is about resonance, you stop focusing on just mechanics and start thinking about how the audience will experience your story. Second, it explains why structure matters without being a limitation. The phrase structured communication is key here. Some writers resist structure because they think it limits creativity, but that's not true. Structure isn't a cage. It's a framework that helps guide an audience's emotion. The most powerful stories feel organic, but that's because they are crafted with intent. ensuring that each moment builds the emotional journey effectively. Next, it highlights that storytelling is both an art and a science. Some people treat storytelling as purely artistic, about raw emotion, intuition, and creativity. Others approach it as a technical craft, focused on rules, theories, and mechanics. But both matter. The best storytellers use the science, psychology, structure, and narrative techniques to enhance the art, creativity, emotional depth, and voice. When you understand this balance, you create stories that are both resonant and technically efficient. And finally, it reinforces the goal that storytelling is connection. At its core, storytelling is about connecting with an audience, engaging them, moving them, making them feel something. This definition keeps that front and center. Whether you're writing a novel, screenplay, or a short story, your ultimate goal should be to make people care. Now, the reason why people care can vary. I've identified 13 different audience archetypes, as I like to call them. It's a little something I'll share in greater detail in the next video. If you're interested in seeing who exactly you're trying to resonate with, be sure to subscribe for when that video comes out. And if you want to see even more of my insights, you can find articles over at www.storymark.com, link in the description.